The leftist media presenter Cathy Newman, who was once humiliated by Jordan Peterson, decided to have a go at Isabel Oakeshott for exposing the lockdown files, and once again, it backfired on Cathy Newman. Now, this is absolutely fascinating, and I'm sure you all remember Cathy Newman, who had a show on Channel 4. She's now part of Times Radio. She was the one who interviewed Jordan Peterson a couple of years ago, and didn't really go well. His attempt to do gotcha journalism didn't really go well, and she tried to do the exact same thing this time, yesterday, with Isabel Oakeshott, the journalist who's exposed the lockdown files and all the leaked WhatsApp messages. That again, who leaked them? Matt Hancock leaked them. She's now getting accused of leaking them herself. It's fascinating because, of course, sometimes you have to do dodgy stuff in order to tell the truth, to expose the truth, like whistleblowers. And she had to break her own NDA in order to release those lockdown files to the Telegraph. Now, the mainstream media and the whole of the consensus is, instead of the same left-wing media that usually find any excuse to attack the government, any government, now they're spending every single minute attacking Isabel Oakeshott, their own fellow journalists, instead of actually focusing on the real baddies, Matt Hancock and his team. Let's go to this interview that Cathy Newman did with Isabel Oakeshott, the journalist who exposed the lockdown files, and tell you the main problem with it.
A bit of a shouting match, I hear, with Harry Cole, political editor of The Sun. I just wonder whether you understand why he was exasperated, given that you're paid a reported £250,000 a year by Talk TV.
And now,
why is she talking about her salary, by the way? By the way, before we continue, it's fascinating. So, the main story is Cathy Newman works for Times Radio, that's part of News UK. Isabel Oakeshott works for Talk TV, which is part of News UK. And Harry Cole, who is a journalist at The Sun, that is part of News UK, had a bit of an issue with Isabel Oakeshott, saying, you should have come to us, you should have given us the story, the News UK family, rather than a Telegraph. So this is a row between, it's an internal row inside News UK, being exposed in public. But it's disgusting that Cathy Newman decided to randomly expose Isabel Oakeshott's salary.
Hang on. Now producers and reporters on a fraction of your salary were having to kind of put up with your sloppy seconds and follow up the story in a rival newspaper. It's a bit galling, isn't it?
I'm just not going to go down this route, Cathy. People don't know the details of my work contracts. I'm just not going to go there. I just don't think that this is of interest to people. I think people are much more interested in what the investigation reveals. Most of our listeners won't know the individuals that you're referring to. I think it's kind of absurd that you should be quoting wild figures about my contract with any news organisation. That's my business. It's not yours.
But
Very good point. Also, maybe Isabel Oakeshott, even though she does work for News UK and Rupert Murdoch Company, in reality, maybe she thought, if I give the story to The Sun, people might not take it as seriously as if I were to give it to the Telegraph. Maybe that's a very legitimate reason. If it were me, I would do the exact same thing.
Just interested why you decided to go with the Telegraph when you do work for Talk TV, and
why does it matter?
A media organisation with other newspapers.
If your focus is on this angle, I will terminate the interview now, because this is not what I've come on here to talk about.
Well, I'm talking about you hitting the headlines, and this is...
Oh my God. Why does it matter which outlet she decided to use to publish very important leaked conversations about the lockdown days? Why is Cathy Newman not talking about Matt Hancock and his dodgy behaviour? Why is she talking about a fellow journalist and attacking her about, why didn't you give it to us rather than... It's absolutely... We don't want to know. We don't care.
Part of the story. But I mean, let's talk about
my work arrangements are not part of the story, actually. They're actually absolutely nothing to do with it.
So you have no qualms about taking this story to the Telegraph. You're happy with how that went?
I'm going to terminate the interview. Good. Okay.
Well, this
is my last warning. Okay. I'm going to terminate the interview. I've not come on here to justify where the story was placed or how I chose to go about that. I've come here to talk about the story, and the fact that you have started wheeling out inaccurate figures about my contract or any working arrangement I have had, I think that is frankly unprofessional.
Well, we're talking about your story that has hit the headlines.
No, you're not. You're talking about my salary. That's what you've been talking about.
Well, no, I'm not talking about your salary anymore.
What has that got to do with you?
I'm not talking about your salary.
Do you want to talk about your salary?
I want to talk about the story that has played out this week. How much are you paid,
Cathy?
I haven't hit the headlines. You've hit the headlines, Isabel.
Well, maybe if you broke some stories, you would.
Well, maybe if you were to break more stories, you would. Why is Cathy Newman so obsessed with it? It makes no sense.
Broken a couple of stories this week since you mentioned it, but don't worry about that. I'm not going to go into that because I haven't hit that. This is not me being interviewed on this stuff. Right. What I want to ask you, Isabel, is here we are that you've ripped up an NDA to dump Matt Hancock in it. You dumped Vicky Price in it. Wait, let me finish. Go. She ended up going to prison on the back of correspondence with you about speeding points.
Good.
You based an unsubstantiated allegation that a former Prime Minister engaged in a sex act with a dead pig on a single source. You also published text messages and emails with the Leave.eu founder Aaron Banks, which were shared with you privately. What I want to ask you, Isabel, is how can any source trust you again?
She's gone. What are you talking to yourself for?
Well, Isabel Oakeshott, I'm afraid, has terminated that interview. But
oh my God, so embarrassing. So Cathy Newman is supposed to be technically one of the professional media broadcasters and journalists. She is. Like, she's supposed to be. But every single example of interview that we have from her is either just politically biased to the left, but that's not really my main issue with her, that she's left-wing. It's just unprofessionalism. What are you doing? Anyway, the one time that, as I said, the mainstream media, the whole of the establishment, the direction and the message is go after Isabel Oakeshott in order to cloud the judgment of the public, in order to distract them from thinking about the government, Matt Hancock and his team, and whatever happened during the lockdown. And what they are releasing and talking about is all the gossipy stuff about lockdown files. So they're distracting us by keep talking about Isabel Oakeshott. And the one time, because she went on whatever that podcast is with Lewis Goodall that they have, the news agent, she went on that show as well. And Lewis Goodall is also left-wing. The one time that this interview focused on Matt Hancock was once again a political gossip part of Matt Hancock's relationship with Isabel Oakeshott. It's weird.
I'm just not going to go there, okay? But if he should not poke the hornet's nest. No, my priority is not protecting my relationship with Matt Hancock. I'm not going to get into a he said, she said war of words with Matt about how he behaved towards me during or after that project. There's plenty I could say.
Oh,
I really no, I'm not going to do that. I really want to.
Please see the people like Lewis Goodall, these so-called journalists. They're obsessed with gossip. She said, when even we were working on a project, that book that they were working on, because she's an independent journalist, she said, there are things I could say about his misbehavior and towards our relationship. Lewis Goodall, immediately, his brain was like, yeah, please do, tell me, I want gossip. No, focus on the actual issue.
Maintain the moral. I really want to maintain, insofar as possible, I would like to make this not about him or about me, because it isn't.
Yeah. I mean, you were about to use the phrase maintain the moral high ground. You would understand if he were here, he would say that moral high ground does not exist because you broke an agreement.
Oh, wow. We are
into.
So not going to get into the moral high ground. Trust me, I'm not going to deploy nuclear weapons, but I have them.
But they exist. These nuclear, what about him and his behaviour?
I'm just not going to go...
He keeps fishing. He's looking for it.
Okay, but if he should not poke the hornet's nest.
Because there are things that you could say which would be very damaging to him.
Yes. I'm not going to do it. Not unless I'm pushed to it. I'm not going to do it because this isn't about him. It isn't about him. It's not about me. It is about everybody who suffered during the pandemic. All of us.
The newsagents.
Oh dear God, the newsagents. Nobody listens to you guys. Anyway, welcome to the mainstream media. This is the culture we have in this country. Absolutely sad. But I'm happy It's because of these people that I exist. This channel exists, and we're doing so well. We're getting more views than the majority of the mainstream media outlets, thanks to you guys and your support. We continue to expose them. We continue to give you the truth and the uncomfortable truth, even if it affects our own biases, for example. Let me know what you think in the comment section. I'm Mahyar, Tousi, and we are the media.